Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to our second session of Family Story Times for the Red Bank Public Library on race and diversity. I am Sierra Williams. I'm the children's librarian. Excuse me. And I really wanted to start this program to help you have conversations in your homes about all of the events that are going on in the news today. And actually, over the past week, things have kind of transitioned from being on the news, on TV, in the newspapers, on our phones, to things happening on the ground in our community. And so that's why I wanted to come outside and have this program here today, because this is where I was with my family just a few days ago when my town had a Justice for George Floyd march and rally. And we sat here in the bleachers over there after marching through town and listen to speeches and songs and poems. We got history lessons, and it was just a really inspiring and motivating experience. But I wanted to tell you that the most uplifting part of it was that there were over 1,000 people here, and we were all together. Old people, young people, black people, white people, but we were all on the same wavelength, all working and chanting and talking about justice and equality and fighting against injustice and unfair treatment of people of color in this country. So it was really wonderful. I wanted to share that with you, and I want to start this day by reading a poem to you from this book. It's called Just Like Me by Vanessa Brantley-Newton. It's a book of poems. It just came out this year, but this poem reminded me of that event. It's called Warrior. And do you see this girl? This is what it says. I'm a warrior, willing to fight the good fight, respectfully, with humanity, and lovingly, with all the kindness inside of me. In my own unique way, I'm a warrior, willing to fight the good fight of love. And that's really how I felt on that day as I sat here I saw Storytime friends, I saw some of my neighbors, and people that I hadn't seen in a really long time. And it just felt like we were all on the same page of wanting to fight this good fight. And I love that this is a kid, because kids can be in that fight too, and that's why we're here, so you can have those conversations. I should say we were all social distancing, we all had our masks on, but we were still together as a community, and that's what made it special. So that poem I thought was special, and it ties into the main book we're going to read today, which is a biography of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and it's called Martin's Big Words by Doreen Rappaport and illustrated by Brian Collier. So we're going to talk a little history today, and that's really important to do. I want to show you something about the word history. Do you see this word? You guys can read. Do you see another word that's hidden inside the word history? Take a look at it. I'm going to go like this. Boom, boom, boom. Now, do you see it? It's the word story. It's the word story. And do you remember last week we talked about how everybody has a story? Whether you're black or white or old or young, everybody has a story that makes you who you are. And so every country has a story, and it's made up of all the stories of all the people who are in it, including you and me. And then our history is just those stories layered on top of each other. So if I take my story and your story and our grandparents' stories and all of their ancestors and go all the way back, that's the history of America. And it includes everybody. And so when we're talking about history, we want to talk about our complete history. We can't just be learning about the history of white people, because that's not everybody. We can't just learn stories that are told from a white perspective, because that's not complete and that's not fair. So we really need to be learning about Native Americans who were here before any settlers touched the shores and whose land was taken away from them. We need to learn about Black Americans whose ancestors were taken against their will from Africa to work as slaves to help build this country. And we need to know those stories and all the stories between then and now so we can understand how we got to where we are today. Asian Americans have stories. Hispanic Americans have stories. Everybody has a story. And we need to be learning about them. And we don't learn enough of them in school. And so that means we have to do it at home. And you guys can do it. You're so smart. You're learning so many things now while you've been home and out of school. I know some of you are learning to read. You're learning how to ride bikes. You're learning how to cook. Some of you are learning how to code on the computer. Maybe you're learning about the stars and the moon and looking out telescopes. There's so many things to learn. So I'm just asking you to add this to your list of things that you would like to learn about. History. And to do that, you're going to have to read. You can watch movies and shows about historical topics. You can visit historical places with your family. That's a fun thing to do. And wherever you live, there's history all around you. So maybe you can find out about the story of where you live. And if you don't get answers to the questions that you have, you got to go on the computer and do some searching and see what you can find out. The library, I should say, has a lot of good resources for that. And we even have World Book Online for kids of elementary school age and middle school age. It's free. You can go through our website and look up anything and get articles and pictures and videos. So I encourage you to do that. But we're going to go ahead and read this book. Let's get to it. I know I talk a lot. My kids tell me that. I want to read you this story because it's so important. And while I read, I want you to pay attention to the illustrations, because Brian Collier made some beautiful collages to go with this story. And I want you to pay attention to the big words. It's called Martin's Big Words because on most of the pages, there are literally big words. And those are quotes from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So let's go. I want to make sure you see the page. It says, everywhere in Martin's hometown, he saw the signs, white only. Can you see it in this picture on this drinking fountain? That means only white people can drink from that. If you're not white, you're going to get in trouble. So everywhere in his town he saw signs like that. And his mother said these signs were in all southern cities and towns in the United States. And every time Martin read those words, he felt bad until he remembered what his mother told him. You're as good as anyone. In church, Martin sang hymns. He read from the Bible and he listened to his father preach. These words made him feel good. When I grow up, I'm going to get big words too. Well, Martin grew up. He became a minister like his father, and he used the big words he had heard as a child from his parents and from the Bible. Everyone can be great. He studied the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. He learned how the Indian nation won freedom without ever firing a gun. Martin said love when others said hate. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. He said together when others said separate. He said peace when others said war. Sooner or later, all the people of the world will have to discover a way to live together. In 1955, That's 65 years ago. In 1955, on a cold December day in Montgomery, Alabama, Rosa Parks was coming home from work. A white man told her to get up from her seat on the bus so he could sit. She said no and was arrested. Montgomery's black citizens learned of her arrest, and it made them angry. They decided not to ride the buses until they could sit anywhere they wanted. For 381 days, they walked to work and school and church. Do you guys know how long a year is? Think about it. It's 365 days. So this is over 1 year. For 381 days, they walked to work and school and church. They walked in rain and cold and blistering heat. Martin walked with them and talked with them and sang with them and prayed with them until the white city leaders had to agree they could sit anywhere they wanted. Here's his quote. When the history books are written, someone will say there lived black people who had the courage to stand up for their rights. In the next 10 years, black Americans all over the South protested for equal rights. I want you to stop and think about 10 years and how long that is. Some of you are not even 10 years old. How old are you now? Now think about how old you're going to be in 10 years. If you're 8 years old right now, you're going to be 18 years old in 10 years. Doesn't that sound old? If you're 10 years old, you're going to be 20. I know how old I'm going to be in 10 years, and that sounds like a long time. But that's how long they protested and marched. Martin walked with them and talked with them and sang with them and prayed with them. It says white ministers told them to stop. Mayors and governors and police chiefs and judges ordered them to stop. But they kept marching. Here's the big words. Wait. For years, I've heard the word wait. We have waited more than 340 years for our rights. No more waiting. They were beaten, jailed, and murdered, but they kept on marching. Some black Americans wanted to fight back with their fists, but Martin convinced them not to by reminding them of the power of love. Love is the key to the problems of the world, he said. Many white Southerners hated and feared Martin's words. A few threatened to kill him and his family. His house was bombed. His brother's house was bombed, but he refused to stop. Remember, if I'm stopped, this movement will not be stopped because God is with this movement. Well, the marches continued. More and more Americans listened to Martin's words. He shared his dreams and filled them with hope. I have a dream that one day in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. After 10 years of protests, remember how long that is? 10 years of protest. The lawmakers in Washington voted to end segregation. The white-only signs in the South came down. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. cared about all Americans. He cared about people all over the world. And people all over the world admired him. In 1964, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. He won it because he taught others to fight with words and not with fists. And I just love this picture of this girl. Doesn't she remind you of the girl in the poem? She looks like a warrior, ready to fight the good fight. Love it. Martin went wherever people needed help. In April 1968, he went to Memphis, Tennessee. He went to help garbage collectors who were on strike. He walked with them and talked with them and sang with them and prayed with them. On his second day there, he was shot. He died. His big words are alive for us today. And his words are so inspiring. And here's a few of them. Freedom, peace, together, I have a dream, and love. That's the end. So that's Martin Luther King's story. Maybe you've read this book before, but now you get to talk about it with your families. I think that's good. So there goes the train. I'll talk loud. So that was his story. Last week we learned that everybody has a story, no matter who you are, what color you are, where you come from, everybody has a story. And do you notice that race was part of his story? The color of our skin is part of our story. His life would have been very, very, very different if he had been born white, right? So we have to admit that our race is part of our story. But we also learned last week that under our skin, we found some bones. There's a skeleton. And you can't tell by looking at any skeleton who that is. Is it a man or a woman, a boy or a girl, a white person or a black person? You just can't tell by looking. And so that's what we learned, that deep down inside, we're all the same. And what's in our heart is the same too. We all want the same things for ourselves and for our families. We all want to be loved. We all want to be respected. We all want to live in peace. And we all want the opportunity to be the best that we can be, to be all that we can be. And so that's why they were marching. They were marching for that freedom and that justice. And that's why we have to march now. And we have to make our voices heard. So I hope that this book and this discussion will give you some things to talk about in your homes. And I want to give you an idea of something fun to do while you're thinking about your story and Martin Luther King Jr.'s story, and that is to make a collage. I made this collage with Miss Jamie in our Power Play class. Power Play is a really fun program. You can find it on our Facebook page in a playlist. But we made these collages, and my collage, I noticed, tells my story. I told you last week a few things about me, and they landed in my collage when I wasn't even thinking about it. I told you I'm from Africa, and there's Africa. I told you I like ice cream, and there's ice cream. I like the beach and blue skies. What else is in my collage? Here's my brown skin. That's part of my story. I had to put it in there. There's a lot of kid stuff because I love kids. But anyway, this would be a really fun project for you to do at home. If you don't have magazines and books that you can cut up and paste together to tell your story, maybe you could just draw a picture. But if you do decide to make a project that represents your story, I would love to see it. If you want to take a picture and post it for me, that would be awesome. And if you want to start a conversation with me or give me some feedback, leave a comment for me under this post. And if you don't want to do that, you can DM me through the library's Facebook page. But I'm really glad you were here today. I hope some things came up that you want to talk about. I hope you stay engaged in this conversation and in all the things that are happening in America and in your own little community. And I hope you come back next Saturday for another story time on race and diversity. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day. Oh, I made a little sign on this side to say peace and love. Take care.